ask for a moment of silence, and then Mr. McEwen will lead us in the pledge.
Right. Take a moment of silence first, please. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Leslie?
Here.
Mr. McEwen?
Here.
Mr. Penn?
Here.
Mrs. Tinglesang? Here. Mr. Showalter?
Here.
Mr. Singer?
Here.
Mrs. Tackett?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Thank you very much. Next item of business is approval of the minutes of our May 12th meeting. Motion by Ms. Tackett. Second by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. See a show of hands that you did receive your check register, please. Thank you. Okay, next we have public comments. Please come to the podium, and you have 4 minutes in which to address the council. And we start out with Ms. Nichols. Mr. Nichols.
Hello, Damian Nichols from Wayman Chapel, AME here in Georgetown. The issue of my concern is police activity in the Boston area. It has gotten to the point where you cannot go home, you cannot go and visit family members, you cannot even attend church without being followed and or harassed. But that being said, there's a more pressing and pertinent issue at hand. I would like to know what we plan to do about the accusations of alleged police abuse of one Mr. Shaka Wilson, who was arrested in Scroggins Park last week. Mr. Wilson was arrested and he was badly beaten. And we would like to know what the council is willing to do to hold the people responsible accountable for their actions. We ask that there be an open investigation so that whoever is responsible be held accountable for their actions, because we don't want this to leave a black eye on the Georgetown Police Department. For the simple fact is I grew up and went to school with a bunch of the guys on the force, and most of them are generally good guys. We don't want a few rogue officers to make a bad name for the rest of the police force. But that being said, if that can be done to one person, what keeps them from acting this way to others? Where there's injustice anywhere, there is a threat to justice everywhere. So we must understand there is something that has to be done, because this cannot be swept underneath the rug. I'm not going to take up any of your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chief, could you address that, please? I know it's been an ongoing investigation on your behalf.
Yeah, we have been investigating it, and I'll tell you what we know so far. There was a domestic violence call from a citizen in Scroggins describing an individual outside an apartment beating on doors and screaming at a female inside trying to break into the apartment. The next call was a 5-year-old that had called the police department, and you could hear at least 3 children screaming in terror as someone's trying to break in the back window of the apartment. I've sent that tape to Judge Gormley, who's handling the family drug case. You could, as the children leave the apartment, they scream, "Someone is killing my mother," and about that time, the first officer arrives on scene. The individual that had broken in through the back window fled the scene. The first responding officer observed a topless woman because her clothes had been torn from her body during the assault inside the apartment. She was obviously beaten, sitting inside a car. There was a crowd of people around her trying to find something to cover her up. Those individuals pointed in the direction that Mr. Shaka had fled. The officer pursued Mr. Shaka, or Mr. Wilson, who stopped. While the officer was trying to frisk Mr. Wilson for weapons, he turned and swung at the officer. The officer fell backwards. The subject advanced on the officer, grabbed his taser, and a struggle ensued. In order to get the individual off his taser, the officer did strike the individual several times in his face. They wound up on the ground. The officer can be heard yelling for help. The officer can be heard a few minutes later yelling for help a second time, that he's in a fight. More officers responded. The individual, Mr. Wilson, was tased and subdued. And right now, that's where the investigation is. Those are the facts as we know them. We have the tapes of the officer screaming for help. We have the tape of the children screaming in terror. And we have the witness statements of the nude, half-nude and beaten woman out outside the apartment. So that's where the investigation stands at this time.
Do you have any comment on some of the other comments made by Mr. Nichols?
I'm very sorry to hear somebody say that. We'd be glad to meet with and talk to and to categorize and stereotype the agency and the officers. It's not fair. I won't stand for it. I won't stand before you, and I'd be glad to talk to anybody. But that simply isn't, it's not true. It's not fair to categorize them and lump them into one group like that.
Has there been a complaint filed by Mr. Wilson alleging, I guess?
There has not.
Please. Would that be the, and this can be a question for either you or Andrew, would that be the proper protocol as far as investigating the incident if someone
He
needs to
can file a complaint, but it is under investigation. We have a very thorough investigation completed, or just about completed. We review all use of force. We've been monitoring Facebook, and we've been recording the things that we're seeing there. We don't try cases on the internet, and we don't. I don't allow my officers to comment on some of the things that have been said on Facebook. It's you look a person in the eye and you talk to them across the table and you work things through. That's the way I've trained them.
So on a use of force is what would trigger an investigation? There's a classified, I guess.
All use of forces have a standard review that we use inside the police department. They all go through this. The officer makes the report, the sergeant reviews it, the captain or the lieutenant reviews it, and then I review it and finally sign off on it. In this case, I met with the Wilson family. It was agreed on that it was only fair to complete the investigation before we drew any conclusions. And I'm going to meet with the Wilson family when we're done. But there has been quite a bit of activity on Facebook. We're aware of it. We're recording it. We know it's out there. And that's generating a lot of, unfortunately, false impressions. There's false information being put out there. I agree, Mr. Wilson suffered some injuries. The fact that he has injuries does not substantiate an excessive use of force.
I've reviewed the record as well. From all indications, it was, based on the circumstances, a justified use of force. I also think it needs to be noted that Mr. Wilson has a history of past violent behavior. He has quite a few arrests for violent behaviors and one prior arrest for assaulting a police officer. This is not his first go-around on this issue.
We just want time to complete the investigation. We'll be glad to meet with people when we're done, but we would ask that, there's a proper procedure for doing this, and we shouldn't get our information about the incident off of the internet or Facebook.
Chief, there was allegations made about following people going to church and so on and so forth. Has there been any complaints filed for that action?
There has not.
Would a complaint necessarily, a complaint about the police department have to be about one particular officer, or can it be about the entire department? Would someone have to know a particular officer or badge number in order to file a complaint regarding police following people in the Boston neighborhood?
No, you could make a general complaint. Now, when somebody calls in complaints, we ask them specific questions about
Absolutely.
what time of the day. What a lot of people don't realize is we can usually find out who the officer was through radio traffic, through his vicinity, that kind of thing.
They have GPS in the cars?
We do not.
Okay. But based upon radio traffic, you
Radio traffic and getting out.
Duty
usually,
rosters.
It's a traffic stop. We can, all of them identify themselves by number on radio. So.
Other comments?
I'm sorry.
Other comments? Are there other comments from the public?
Thank you, Mr. Nichols, for being here, and thank you, Chief. Would you like to?
Hi, Mayor Ronnie.
Howard, good to see
My
you.
name is Pam Landrum. I live in the Boston area. On last week, Thursday night, I was coming home, and on my vehicle, I have a Nissan Sentra, and on the right side, I had a light out, but I wasn't aware of it because I had it out and it was fixed, and I didn't know it was out. I live on Lynn Street, and as I was turning right onto my street, police officer come from, he didn't come from behind me, somewhere in front of me, that's where he was, but I didn't see him, it was dark. As I turned onto my street, he turned his lights on. So when you turn to the right, I live right there. So I parked in my yard, and I sit there, and he said, I don't know who the police officer was, it was dark. He told me, don't get out of the car. So he approached my vehicle, and he said, do you know why I stopped you? I'm like, no, I don't. He said, well, you have a light out. I said, well, I had a wreck, I didn't know. Then he asked me, well, who lives here? Now, if he's stopping me for a light out, he has no business asking me who lives with me. But I answered, I said, my granddaughters live with me. And then I didn't know at the time, but it was the other people standing out. And the next day they told me, they said they saw the police officer come behind me. Then I didn't see behind me, but I was told another police officer come behind me as I was parking in my yard. Then on Saturday, I was coming from getting a part for my car at Motors, and I was on Washington Street, and as I was on Washington Street, there's apartments there, and I saw the police officer come out of the parking lot. So there's a car in front of me. This car is making a left. I'm behind the vehicle. I'm making a left. The police officer, I'm watching the whole time. He follows me into the Boston area. He didn't put any lights on me. I kept watching him in my rearview mirror, so I made a left turn. He makes a left turn. But as I'm turning, on Booker T, I had already turned right, but he didn't see where I turned. But the way he come on Lynn Street, he couldn't see me like facing you all, so he knew I had to turn on Booker T. So there were some friends of mine that were sitting outside, so I got nervous. There were some friends sitting outside. I parked where they live. I said, I think there's a police officer following me. So I'm sitting there, so as I look in my rearview mirror, my friend said, yeah, they're right behind, he's right behind you, you know. As he pulled up like this to me, he just kind of like looked at my car and just looked at me. And I was nervous, and I feel like living in the Boston area, I don't care if it's night or day, we shouldn't have to be nervous living in our own community, you know. And like I said, you know, and now I'm afraid to go out at nighttime, you know, that a police officer may follow me. And like I said, I want to feel comfortable in my own neighborhood. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask a question, just a point of clarification? Because she was concerned about a police officer following her, but I thought, was the other concern of a police officer following people, or was it people following people that you expressed earlier, that Brad kind of alluded to?
I think what he was implying was that there was police officers following other people.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Bad. Okay, but I thought I also understood that there was a drug problem and that maybe more enforcement was needed in the area. Am I a little bit off on that?
No, you're not. We want
The thing
to.
about it is,
We want to have a
if
presence.
it's a problem, that doesn't have them give them a reason to follow.
Assume that people
Any and
over there
everybody
for that reason.
One-
But everyone that lives in the Boston area, not drug dealers or on drugs.
Well, Mayor, one thing though is, I understand the concerns they have, and we need to listen to everybody, but as a council, we have no authority at all. This all is under your jurisdiction because you're in charge of all your personnel. We can listen to it, but it has to go through Mr. Varney, okay? We as a council have no say-so over personnel matters, okay? And I just wanted to let you all know that we can't sit here and say, well, we're gonna do something, because
It's his ballgame.
That's true, and certainly I've been monitoring the
Right.
situation since the incident happened. Ms. Nichols, you have something else to say? I'm sorry.
No, I'm good.
No.
No, Mr.
Yes.
No, sir, I just want to say that we appreciate, excuse me.
That's all right. Need it for the record.
We appreciate everything that the police do. Don't take that, we need police officers in the community, we know that.
Absolutely.
But the thing about it is, not everyone does or sells drugs. Now, when you see somebody coming to church, now something has to be wrong with you to automatically assume that coming out of church, they've been selling drugs or using drugs. I mean, that's just, everybody in the community doesn't use drugs. A whole lot of the stuff that happens, that Georgetown is on the news a lot now. And most of the activity that you see on the news is not in Boston. I live on the other side of town, and we have a whole lot of stuff going on. I can't hardly sleep at night. And that's not Boston. And the police are hardly ever over there. And I just want to say that because we automatically associate Boston with everybody in Boston's a criminal. And that's, and that's not a first statement. And I just wanted to clarify something. I didn't say that the police department was rogue. I said there are some officers in the police department who have been displaying gross misuse and abuse of power. That's all we're saying. We appreciate the police and we thank you for your time.
Well, any time that we have anything that you think is not the way it should be, please file a complaint.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, I have a suggestion, and I live about a block from Boston. I live over on Gano, and I walk my dog through Boston all the time. And there's been a couple of nights since I've lived on Gano, probably 3 or 4 times where I've been followed home by a police officer. May have like a tail light out or something like that, and they'll pull me over sometimes and tell me I've got a tail light out. I think maybe the biggest problem we've got is that we have a community that's being policed that needs to be policed in terms of the drug problem and a lot of the violence going on in that area.
Yes, because I get.
It's a good, strong neighborhood.
It is, absolutely.
It's an historic neighborhood, quite frankly. And what I would suggest is we've got a community center over there. Your office set up a time where we can have some of the residents of Boston, or make it as open as possible, meet at the Ed Davis Community Center with some of the police officers of the force, along with you and the chief and whoever else, at least to put a face to the badges and the like. And I'd be glad to be there as well. It's only 2 blocks away from my house. And I think that's maybe. I don't want Miss Landrum or anyone. Is that your name, Miss Landrum? Yes. Okay. I kind of remember what it's like when I was, especially when I was younger, kind of the feeling of kind of estrangement before I got on council that I had with the police department when I get followed in college or something, or drive too fast. And that's not a feeling you want, especially out of your law-abiding citizens and your residents, especially people that support, what is a great neighborhood and a great community over in Boston. So what I would suggest is we try to have some sort of community meeting at the Ed Davis Center and bring some of the officers so that people can actually meet each other and talk.
Chief is always available.
Ed Davis is a city building. It's sometimes an underused asset, and I think this is one of the. It's called an Ed Davis, I think, community center or learning center. Learning center. Well, learning. Well, they'll be learning about each other. There you go.
Learning center.
They'll be learning about each other, and I think that would be. Go a long way to try to quelling some of these things. I mean, we don't want to cast suspicion or to make law-abiding citizens uncomfortable. We want to make them secure and comfortable in their own neighborhoods. That's what the policing and the efforts going on over there as far as combating the drug trade is all about, quite frankly. It's to make me and my family feel more secure in the North End, and to make your family feel more secure in the North End. So that's what I would suggest, Mayor.
I have other requests also asking for police presence, that they don't feel safe. And we want the police to be as present there as they are in any other section of town.
And it is like, I'll tell people this, when I've gone door to door campaigning, there's not a better area of town other than maybe around where I grew up on Royal Spring, to go campaigning because everybody is so nice when you knock on their door.
Yeah.
A lot of the older ladies will invite you in the house. It's really kind of the community and neighborhood that open neighborhood that you really like to see in a small town. So
Anyone else like to comment on this situation?
Mayor,
And we appreciate you being here tonight.
I do, I just want to say also too.
Come on up to the podium, please.
Hello, I'm Chantel Givens, and I just wanted to say that I was born and raised in Boston also, and as he said, when he said about the drug community or whatever, my kids, they go to the park, they play. I mean, everybody, they all raise each other's children, and like he said, everybody's not on drugs. Everybody's not doing drugs. You know, I have a degree, I work, and I drive a nice car, and I'm like, when I go through Boston now, I'm thinking, Lord, they're gonna pull me over, thinking I'm doing something wrong, you know. And it's just not right. And when I'm doing everything right, and you know, and still have to feel like that, something's wrong. It's really wrong.
We don't want you feeling that way.
Right.
There's no reason for you to feel that way.
Yeah, and I feel like also, like when he said it's known for drugs, I mean, all of Georgetown is corrupt with drugs. A lot of, not gonna say all, but a lot.
It's not concentrated in that one area.
Right.
We make busts all over the city.
Right. So I just wanted to address that, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here.
My name is Sunshine Nichols. I'm not from Georgetown. Damien is my husband. You was talking about cleaning up the drugs and stuff. He has a youth organization. We're working on that. But if we don't have support from the rest of the community, what can we do? And I don't like being followed when I stop at my church, that is the heart of Boston, stop on a Tuesday to get something and leave and get tailed all the way to Hillside where I live by the police, which has happened a number of times. My kids go over there and play, don't have to worry about anybody bothering them. You know, the drugs is an issue, but, you know, like they said, not everybody's a criminal. Not everybody is doing wrong, you know. And that's all I wanted to say, too.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I comment as well? I'd agree with Mark that there had been some requests. I'd heard some requests over the last 2 or 3 days about the need for a community meeting. But the other thing I'd like to reiterate, I think the city has done a great job under Chief Bossy's leadership in improving what's been happening with the police department, with the retention of officers, and with the improvement of morale. But I wanted to reiterate the fact that he absolutely has an open door policy and is willing to meet with anyone and look into any issue. I could say the same for the mayor, but just I think it's important that the community hear that from council as well, that we're supportive of what the chief is doing with the police department. I've been on the police committee for, I guess, 3 or 4 years now, and I don't like to hear complaints, but that also gives us an opportunity to look. There's always somewhere we can improve whatever department it is, and if it's something that the chief should look into, or if there's a community concern, I hope that would certainly be brought to us openly. I appreciate you all being here tonight, and would look forward to a meeting in Boston. My wife and I'll be voting at Ed Davis tomorrow for the first time since we moved, and I've run and biked and walked all over everything north of East Main Street in the last year, and my kids have played ball up there as well, and we feel comfortable in the neighborhood and feel welcome, and I wouldn't want that to change. I certainly agree with the fact that, you know, you could probably find drug use or maybe even drug trafficking in maybe every neighborhood in Georgetown. It's an unfortunate aspect of our society, but at the same time, I think that the police have a greater job than the numbers of police officers that we have for our city at this time. And so I wanted, you know, if there's something that we can address or Chief Bossy can address, that the community, that you all individually would bring that to his attention or to the mayor's attention. Thank you.
Hey, Mayor, can
Anyone else want to comment,
I
David?
want real quickly. I know over the past however many years, you and we as a body have had a lot of requests for additional manpower in that area, and I guess that's been given. And you know, I know it's not something we want to talk about in terms of the problems and how they're being specifically addressed. But I also know that Chief Bossy is relatively new chief to this community, and perhaps you all haven't had the opportunity to get to know him. But the one word that I would use to describe him is the word integrity. And he's got an enormous amount of integrity. And I assure you that if you had the opportunity to get to know him, you'd like him. And you'd feel very confident in his ability to represent everyone in the community. So if you're concerned about it, he's at the top of the food chain. I guess the mayor's technically at the top, but he's right there. And I'm sure he can make you feel a lot better about any situation.
And I would like to say that I strongly believe that the drug problem that we have in that area is outsiders. It's not our people. They're coming in from outside.
That's right.
I know the people of Boston, and that's not the way that they're identified. We do know that there are outside forces coming in, and we have an eye on this all the time. That's the reason ever so often, after we've played it out for several months, we're able to have a drug roundup. And you'll note that a lot of those addresses are outside of town, not from here. Anyone else like to comment? Again, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate your concern, and your concerns are ours.
Thank you, Mayor Bond.
Good to see you. Get off that cane.
I'm trying to.
Okay, Mr. Sloan.
Yes, sir. Wanted to make the city aware of a couple of things. One is to recognize the providers this week. It's National EMS Week until Sunday. That was established in 1974 through Act of Congress to recognize emergency medical providers across the country. The second thing is, and it was a little early, but one of the things we do is constantly look at ways to improve our system. One of the big players that's always been present with the EMS system is the American Heart Association. Last year I applied for a recognition award through the American Heart Association. We were granted first annual award back on May 9th. They came down from Columbus. And what this does is recognize our system of care for ST elevation, myocardial infarction, or STEMI. We have direct protocols that allow us to transport those folks onto Lexington to the cardiac catheterization labs. And one of the ways that we're able to track this data is through the ESO system that we purchased last year. So we're able to gather a lot more data on our patients than we had in the past. So I'm proud to announce that this year, for the inaugural year of the association's award, we were presented with a bronze award for our system of care. They had a bronze and silver level this year. I'm going for gold next year. So that's the plan. And it's based on quarterly data that's submitted. This is a national recognition. It will be put in their publications nationally. I've submitted for a publication, for a national publication as well. But this is the guys and ladies that work on the department. This is just the paperwork I put in, but it's the guys on the street that deserve recognition for this award. So I just wanted to make aware of that. There will probably be some more press coming out on it through American Hearts, just in the inaugural phases of their rolling out this program this year. So, and to toot our horn, we were one of 207 agencies across the country selected this year, and one of only 5 in Kentucky. So I'm pretty proud of our department. Congratulations.
Thank you. That's
Thank
all
you,
I have.
David.
Thank you.
Good report. Mr. Price?
I'm Stephen Price. I live at 167 Rucker Avenue in Georgetown. I distributed this paperwork to each of you except for Councilman Showalter. I ran out. I want to hand him one.
Thank you.
Last week, I think it was, I was here, and I handed you a copy of a brochure that I had gotten from the Chamber of Commerce brochure. Yeah, that's it right there. Councilman Singer has it. A walk through time. And I told you I was going to send you a letter, and I've handed you the letter just now. Each of you has a copy of the letter. It's addressed to the Town Council and to the Scott Fiscal Court. And it I think I read sections of it to you last week. I didn't have a copy for you, but now I told you I would copy it, and you have your copy. And in addition, there's a copy of a letter that I wrote to Mayor Varney, which describes my experience. Let's see, I thought I had a copy of it here to read to you, but apparently I don't. So I'll just tell you what it says. And you have a copy of it there. But in about 2003, I had tried to contact an out-of-state owner of 2 small buildings that lay in the alley down here behind, that stood in the alley down here behind Doug Smith, where Doug Smith has his real estate office. I was thinking of putting a business, an office supply store there and a hardware store. There were 2 small buildings. One might have served as an office supply site, the other as a hardware store site. And while I was trying to contact the owner out of state, the buildings were demolished. And I was told by then Code Officer Johnson that the town had demolished them because they wanted parking spaces, but the property is not the town's. The buildings are gone, as are my business plans. And I'm here tonight in reference to the buildings which, according to the news graphic, you intend to demolish at the corner of North Broadway and Washington Street. And I will say to you that there are industrious people who would, in time, occupy those buildings with useful, productive businesses offering services and goods. And once the buildings are gone, that possibility vanishes. And dry space created by hard work and the financing that people have put up the money to create dry space in Georgetown is the only thing that distinguishes Georgetown, not the only thing, but maybe the main distinction between Georgetown and the wilderness that existed before Georgetown is the structures. And when you destroy structures, you are pushing Georgetown back toward the wilderness. And in this case, the wilderness is a concrete wilderness that, to me, I've never been to a NASCAR race, but Georgetown seems to me to be a wilderness NASCAR track. And to accommodate motor transport further by demolishing those buildings would indeed push us toward a concrete wilderness. And in the paperwork I handed you, I think I meant to put this here. If I didn't, I'll check to be sure. But there's a map here, an aerial image. Was that the buzzer?
It was.
There's an aerial image here of the downtown area, and you'll see that on the day this aerial image was made, there is plenty of parking not occupied to the east of here at the health department, the center of town, the museum, the Presbyterian church, all over. Thank you.
Okay, Steve. Mr. Miller?
Hi, my name is Russell Miller. I'm an owner-operator of American Soccer Works over here right behind us. And I don't know, I'm just here to try to figure out what's going on with my building, you know. I feel like I've deprived my family, I've deprived my children. I've worked my butt off for 15 months now, 70 hours a week for nothing. This is how I go home every day, sir. My jeans are so dirty to working and crawling around the floor every day that my wife can't even get the dirt out of it. And all I'm doing is paying bills. I'm just to the point to where I'm getting out of the hole. And then I found out last week they're taking my building, they're tearing it down, they're building a parking garage. Sure, I can go rent another place. They ain't like the only place in town to rent. But let me tell you, I pay $500 a month over there. The cheapest I think I can find is $800. I can't do it. I'm 53 years old. I'm made up with arthritis. I'm old and I'm slow. And I had a man come in my shop the other day, and he said, I really appreciate you being here. He said, I got my tire changed and I didn't have to drive to Lexington. I said, that's part of the reason I opened this, not just to try to make money. I tried to serve the community in a service to keep you from having to drive to Lexington to buy a quart of oil, to buy a part, or have a service done on your motorcycle, or your ATV, or dirt, whatever your power sports needs may be.
Have you talked to the owner of your building? I know you pay rent to him.
Well,
has he informed you
the owner of my
of
building,
anything?
his name is Wayne Gillespie. The only thing, I did call him because I've been hearing rumors from city council meetings and things like that. So I called my landlord. I said, what's going on? He said, well, they're proposing to buy my building. I said, well, Wayne, if that's going to benefit you, I can't blame you a bit for wanting to go ahead and pursue that. Now, Miss Scott and her husband Junior over here, I tell you what, I'm glad y'all are taking her building, and I hope you do tear it down. I hope to God them two people get to retire. They're old, they're broke down, and I hope they enjoy what type of life they have left with their grandkids. They're so stuck in that business. They've been there for so many years, they can't walk away. Well, apparently they're being forced away, which is probably a good thing. Sometimes force is a good thing.
No, we're not doing this by eminent domain.
But sometimes it is.
No, we're not doing it. We're not condemning the building. This is
an option for them if they
Right.
wanted to sell it or
We're
not.
not.
Well,
We're not forcing nobody.
I'm glad they took the option. I hope they enjoy their life. But I'm not old enough to retire, and I have to continue working to support my family. Doesn't mean I can't go to work somewhere else or pursue another job or pursue whatever. But I feel, I'm from Middletown, Ohio. When I go up there, it's sad. Every building in that town, it has a for rent sign on it. I guess they can't even afford to tear them down. The banks pay people to live in the houses so drug addicts and thieves or whatever don't go in and strip the copper out of them. And then I look at Facebook pictures of Middletown, Ohio. They call it Little Kentucky. Back in the 50s, it was a really booming place. So I thought, I'm proud to be from there. It was a place to be proud from. And Georgetown reminds me very much of Franklin, Ohio. It's brick streets. It's I spoke with him the other day. I said the only reason these businesses up on Main Street are still here is they don't pay rent. Guarantee you. Walk down through there. How many of them own the building? How many pay rent? Couldn't afford it.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
I would just like to ask you guys basically, are you taking my building and tearing it down or not? Or are you making some type of proposal to my landlord to possibly do this?
It's on the agenda for discussion today, sir.
So what does that mean? Sit back down and keep listening?
We're bringing the issue up, yes.
Sir, I'm sorry.
Yes, the issue will come up for discussion today.
The council will be making a decision.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Okay. We're down to the mayor's comments. My only comment is to encourage people to get out and vote tomorrow. There's been many, many lives that have been given so that we have the right to do that. Look at many, many other countries who get a right to vote or have an opportunity to vote. They do so with some armed soldier making sure that they're not shot in the process. So that is a right. It's not a God-given right. If it's a God-given right, then everyone in the world would be able to vote, and that's just not the case. That is a freedom that we have earned in this country. So I would encourage everyone to get out and vote tomorrow on Election Day. And that's my only comment tonight. City Attorney, City Clerk. We now come to the closed session to discuss future acquisition or sale of real property. Have a motion?
Somebody for a motion. Hold on one moment. Got to get my citation.
What is it?
I apologize.
Have to do this the right way.
Yeah, we got to do it the right way. I forgot to bring my my language. Hold on.
I didn't bring my language either. I'm sorry.
All right, here we go.
3.1 What is it?
Subsection B.
Cunningham.
Can you make a motion to go into closed session for joint this section to discuss acquisition or construction or sale of real estate?
I make a motion to go into executive session to, for acquisition of real estate according to 61-810B.
Second.
Second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? We'll go into a closed session for a moment. We'll we'll notify everyone when to come back into the council chamber. second the motion?
Tracy, I made the motion and Carrie made the second.
Parent, to come back into regular session. Okay, we are in, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? We are back in regular session.
Tracy, will you read that resolution, please?
Oh, sure. A resolution approving the purchase of properties at 164 North Broadway Street, 170 North Broadway Street, 112 East Washington Street, and 114 East Washington Street, and authorizing the mayor to execute all necessary documents. Whereas the city of Georgetown has negotiated the purchase of 4 properties at 164 North Broadway Street, 170 North Broadway Street, and 112 East Washington Street, and 114 East Washington Street. Now therefore be it resolved by the Georgetown City Council. Section 1. That the contract between the City of Georgetown and Annetta Scott for the purchase of 164 North Broadway Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, and 170 North Broadway Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, at the appraised price of $275,000, plus a sales commission of $8,250 to Wallen Hamilton Real Estate is approved, and the mayor is authorized to execute the contract and any necessary documents to effectuate the sale. Section 2. That the contract between the City of Georgetown and the estate of Joe Worthington for the purchase of 112 East Washington Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, at the appraised price of $54,000 is approved, and the mayor is authorized to execute the contract and any necessary documents to effectuate the sale. Section 3. That the contract between the City of Georgetown and the Wayne Gillespie for the purchase of 114 East Washington Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, at the appraised price of $150,000 is approved, and the mayor is authorized to execute the contract and any necessary documents to effectuate the sale. Dated this 19th day of May, 2014.
Mayor, I'd gladly make a motion for approval.
Motion for approval by Mr. Lusby, second by Mr. Tackett. Any further comments?
Yeah, just 2 comments, Mayor. I just wanted to make it clear that this was a voluntary sale by the owners of the 3 properties.
3 property owners.
In one case, case of the property that was specifically mentioned by the gentleman that approached the podium, that was actually, that property was on the market, and another of these 3 properties was also on the market for an extended period of time. This in no way was a condemnation proceeding or a proceeding of eminent domain, and the threat thereof was never presented. This was a completely voluntary sale by 3 interested property owners, and if this was in any way condemnation proceeding or threat thereof, I wouldn't be voting for it like I am tonight. So it's a good deal for the city. The second thing I'd say is that we're going to make it a parking lot, I guess, for 10 years, but there is a lot that we can do with the property down the line after those 10 years are up, and it's not just about parking or making a parking garage. This is about the long-term vision for the city, and it'll be a great addition to the city property. And who knows what we'll do with it, or our kids will do with it.
Okay, any other comments?
Mayor, my only thought is in the, I guess, the design, if this passes, is in the design of the parking lot, that it still be have a multi-use ability. I don't know if for example, and I'm not recommending this, I'm just saying if the farmer's market expanded and needed to move from Court Street, from Court Square to there, or if the
Festival of Horse,
the Festival of Horse and the attractions of the booths there, I think the design of that should be able to incorporate, like I said, a multi-use. I don't have any better engineering or technical term for it, but I think that's a consideration.
Thank you. Any other comments before we take the vote? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passed. We will proceed on the closing date of purchasing those properties on the corner of Washington and Broadway. Okay, next item of business. Resolution, we just got through approving the purchase of properties. Second reading of an ordinance annexing the Bevins property, sponsored by Ms. Sames and Mr. Thompson.
An ordinance related to the annexation of certain real property consisting of a total of 4.009 acres, more or less owned by James B. Bevins, situated on the west side of South Broadway, U.S. Highway number 25 South, aka Lexington Road, adjacent to and bounded on the south by the Giles property, adjacent to and bounded by the north by Lesby Path, adjacent to the city limits of Georgetown in Scott County, Kentucky, and known and designated as 1171 and 1175 Lexington Road. Whereas the owners have consented to the annexation of certain real property consisting of 4.009 acres, more or less, situated on the west side of the fronting of the Georgetown-Lexington Road, adjacent to and bounded on the south by the Giles property, bounded on the north by Lesby Path, and known and designated as 1171 and 1175 Lexington Road in Scott County, Kentucky. And whereas all appropriate steps required under Chapter 81A of the Kentucky Revised Statutes have been performed or waived, and whereas a copy of said consent having been made a part of the record in this matter and available for review with the minutes of this meeting, and whereas said property is now embraced within the county of Scott, Kentucky, and is contiguous to the existing city limits and having urban character, is appropriate for annexation in its entirety to the city of Georgetown. Now therefore be it ordained by the city of Georgetown, Section 1, purpose. The hereinafter described property is urban in character and is contiguous to the existing city limits of the city of Georgetown. It is therefore desirable to annex this property to the city of Georgetown, extending the boundaries of the city to include this property described as follows. See legal description of property annexed, attached hereto, incorporated herein, and made a part hereof by reference as Exhibit A. Section 2, annexation. The above described real property is hereby annexed into the city of Georgetown, all technical requirements having been satisfied or waived by consent, being filed with the minutes of the Georgetown City Council meeting dated the 19th day of May 2014. Section 3, zone classification. The annexation of this property shall not affect its zone classification. Section 4, effective date. This ordinance shall become effective upon its publication date in May of 2014, whereupon the foregoing ordinance was read for the first time on the 12th day of May 2014, read for the second time, passed and approved on the 19th day of May 2014.
Motion.
Okay, motion.
Second.
Any other comments? This is second reading. We have roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lesby?
Yes.
Mr. McEwen?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mrs. Karen Tingle Sames? Get your whole name. Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mr. Singer?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Okay, motion did pass. Okay, finance, next item.
Good evening. I have a request from the Telecommunications Dispatch Department. As you recall, they received a one-time payment from a settlement with a phone company that wasn't charging 911 fees. That came from the state. We originally allocated $15,000 of that for some of their building maintenance repairs. He's currently requesting the remainder of that to go into his office equipment budget for the purchase of some computers and monitors. And so, like he said, that money could only be spent on dispatch and dispatch equipment. So I'll let Tracy read the order.
Does this have to do with the recording system, or is that in the?
No, this is not to do. This is to do with replacing some computers. I don't think Jeb's here tonight, but I'm assuming, I don't know if they have XP computers or older computers. Like I know we've talked about some others in the system that need to be replaced.
You got,
Listed
I don't
vendor,
need to read it if they don't want me
6
to.
from one vendor, 8
don't need to read it?
Yes.
Okay.
But Karen's asking
I'll
a
answer that
question.
question.
Motion for approval?
Motion.
second, but I
she-
want to know the vendor.
Yes. The computers were from Dell and the monitors were from CDWG.
We have a,
McEwen and Karen.
and Karen second, okay. Any further comments? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Okay. We've brought-
Second reading of the board ordinance for the police department buildings, sponsored by Ms. Tackett and Mr. Lusby.
Obviously, we'll be talking about the bids here momentarily, but we have brought back the $5 million bond ordinance for a second reading. As you know, we had first reading on a 5 and a $5.5 million because we were a little unsure of where the bids were going to come in. They did come in. We were pleased with how they came in, and so this reading is on the $5 million amount. And I'll go ahead and pass out, and Brian Skinner is here from Ross and Clair, but he'll take one, pass them around. Apologize for not getting that into your packet, but this is just some information on what a $5 million bond does, the proceeds from that, and the fees that are associated with that. So those are some numbers from Ross Sinclair and Associate with some example of a 15-year financing and a 20-year financing. As you'll see, the 20-year financing is within the budget that we have planned for in the next 14-15 budget, and that is what is recommended by Ross Sinclair. Both of these would be callable and able to pay in full after 10 years, whether we do 15 or 20. So that said, I'll let Tracy read the second reading.
Summary of an ordinance of the City of Georgetown, Kentucky. An ordinance of the City of Georgetown, Kentucky authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds series 2014 in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $5 million for the purpose of financing the cost of the acquisition, construction, installation, and equipping of a new police station, approving the form of bonds, authorizing designated officers to execute and deliver the bonds, authorizing and directing the filing of notice with the state local debt officer, providing for the payment and security of the bonds, creating a bond payment fund, maintaining the heretofore established sinking fund, authorizing the acceptance of the bid of the bond purchaser for the purchase of the bonds, authorizing other actions in connection with the issuance of the bonds, and repealing inconsistent ordinances. The ordinance sets forth general rules, regulations, and conditions for the issuance of general obligation bonds by the City of Georgetown, Kentucky. City. An aggregate, the principal amount not to exceed $5 million. The bonds, subject to decrease by the city in which amount as is necessary or desirable for the purpose of financing the cost of the project and paying the cost of issuing of the bonds. Provisions are made for the authorization and issuance of the bonds, for the application of the proceeds of the bonds, for the establishment of a bond payment fund, for the maintenance of a sinking fund, and for the certain covenants of the city with respect to the bonds. The bonds are to be sold at public competitive sale in accordance with the provisions of KRS Chapter 424. The bonds pledge the full faith and credit of the city, and provision is made for the collection of a tax to pay the principal of and interest on the bonds, subject to certain credits as provided in Section 7 of the ordinance. As required by KRS 83A.060, the following Section 7 of the ordinance is set forth in its entirety. Section 7, General Obligation. The bonds shall be full general obligations of the city, and for the payment of said bonds and the interest thereon, the full faith, credit, and revenue of the city are hereby pledged for the prompt payment thereof. During the period the bonds are outstanding, there shall be, and there hereby is levied on all the taxable property in the city, in addition to all other taxes, without limitation as to rate, a direct tax annually in an amount sufficient to pay the principal of and interest on the bonds within, when as due, it being hereby found and determined that current tax rates are within all applicable limitations, said tax shall be and is hereby ordered, computed, certified, levied, and extended upon the tax duplicate and collected by the same officers in the same manner and at the same time. The taxes for general purposes for each of said years are certified, extended, and collected. Said tax shall be placed before and in preference to all other items, and for the full amount thereof, provided, however, that in each year, to the extent that the other lawfully available funds of the city are available for the payment of the bonds and are appropriated for such purpose, the amount of such direct tax upon all of the taxable amount in the city shall be reduced by the amount of such other funds so available and appropriated. A copy of the ordinance and of the form of the documents in connection with the issuance of the bonds are on file in the office of the City Clerk, 100 Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324.
Motion, Mayor.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I may be the only one that doesn't vote for this. I'm actually voting for the police department. I am not voting for $5 million debt more, because that takes us back to the level of debt for the city that we were in 2006. And I really think with what we have in the fund balance, we could comfortably take a couple $1 million off and pay for at least part of it, so we'd only have a $3 million debt. And if we did that, that would take us back to only the levels of 2010. So, but that's just a comment, and I think it's going to pass without my vote anyway.
Any other comments?
Mayor, one thing I'd like to add to it, and I guess you're going to get into the construction cost here in just a little bit, right? After this?
Yes.
I guess there's anticipation that the costs are going to be less than the $5 million, right?
Well, as you know, you received it in your packet, and we can touch on this, that with the base and alternates that we're recommending you accept a 5% contingency in the special inspections, we're within about 40 to 50,000 of what our proceeds would be from the bond. So that is, so yeah, requesting a $5 million bond, it will most likely be a $5 million bond issue.
Okay. I understand where Karen's coming from. I guess part of my thought would be that right now, with the interest rate environment as low as it is, that if we're going to be securing some type of long-term financing, 15 years or 20 years, whatever the case may be, I like the idea of going on and locking it in and taking the money that perhaps she's talking about and paying off maybe one or two of the other loans. I know that's a discussion that we're going to have in the near future. You know, at some point the rates are going to start to go back up again. And I guess I kind of like the idea of capturing this rate right now with I come to the podium though if you don't care.
In the past even 2 months since we've been here first discussing it, we're probably down another 25 basis points. So to say the iron's pretty hot right now to lock in what you can, and as we said, you got a lot of variable rate debt out there that you want to lock in also. So if you got some cash laying around, you know, now could be the time to go ahead.
David, I had a discussion with Karen about that same situation there, and certainly it'd have to be a proposal coming from the council, but I would certainly be in favor of doing just what you said, paying down a couple of the other debts.
Okay.
And going ahead with what we have here.
Yeah. We've been talking for some time now, I guess since we brought you on as our advisor, that we're going to be probably looking at shifting the variable rate money over to something fixed.
And he's been working on that for us already. We were just trying to get through this before we bring it to you.
Nobody's, you know.
But we are looking at that already.
Okay. And I guess that just, to me, emphasizes why I'm okay with going on forward with the $5 million. I still like the idea of paying something else off and trying to improve our cash flow.
I think we're headed in that direction.
We're headed in a great direction, Mayor. There is no doubt about that. One point I do want to ask about would be, and we talked about this in the finance meeting on a couple of occasions, maybe even here, is not actually executing the funding for this like right away. We want to try to delay it out just a little bit, because when we borrow the money, it's not like a construction loan. We can't just borrow a little bit as we go. We got to borrow the whole amount, the whole $5 million, and the interest clock starts ticking right at that moment. Right. So I mean that. By approving this tonight, it doesn't impact that. We're still going to be able to.
We're not going to pull the trigger until you guys are ready.
Kind of float the market, so to speak.
And of course, I'd already mentioned this, I know, to David and Connie, because they're on the finance committee. Don't think Ross and Claire knows it yet, but I was going to ask them to come to our June 9th finance meeting so we can talk about such as the timing of this debt when we want to sell these bonds. We don't want to lose out on the good interest rate, but we do have a little cash flow that we can pay up front and then reimburse ourselves with the loan. That also works out on timing of payments, how many payments we make during the next fiscal year.
I mean, I know it'll change, but about what is the interest rate right now?
Interest rate right now on the 20-year issue would be somewhere around right at 3%, 3.05, something like that.
Which,
20 years.
Which is, we're doing the 20-year.
That's the recommendation.
That's the recommendation,
yes.
right.
Okay.
The 15-year would take it down a little bit more, like 260. You don't get as much of a change as you get lower. The curve doesn't.
Because that's with David's suggestion. I mean, I'm good with you know, because I think it's going to pass regardless what my opinion is on it tonight, and pay off some more of the debt later. I think that's a great thing. But for where interest rate is currently, we've got 2.5 on the car loans, and then the other is 0.094% that we're paying now. Now I know that's subject to change at any given moment, but those are a lot lower than the 3% that you're talking about now. So paying off the low instead of adding to the high. But if we were borrowing $2.5 million, does the interest rate go up or does it stay the same?
But it's really the term that you're borrowing that determines your interest rate and how long it's going to be locked in.
Okay, Gotcha.
And I guess from my perspective, I guess I kind of know right now where it's going to be. You know, it's going to be in that 3% range, and it's going to take us some time to decide on how much of that variable rate money we want to shift over to some fixed program. That could take, I guess, a number of months to actually execute too. So I guess, you know, the comfort of knowing that we're going to get something at 3% right now today makes me feel pretty good. And you know, reflecting back to when we did have some of our money at a fixed rate, you know, it's at a relatively high rate, and this council debated extensively to go to a variable rate, which was at a much lower rate, and we've saved, gosh, hundreds of thousands, probably millions of dollars in interest expense over that period of time. And you know, looking back, that was a huge thing that we did in order to get through the economic crisis that we were faced with at the time.
How much is our CDs paying now for interest?
Not much. I think I have to go look at. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I know they're
less than 1, aren't they?
That's kind of how.
Yeah.
That's kind of how sometimes I get confused on that.
Yeah.
That we're going to pay 3% on 5,000.
it doesn't make
some
sense
CDs
that
that
the
are paying
deposit
0%.
accounts are not paying.
So why don't you
Yeah.
use part of that, and then you still have your security blanket? But that's.
I would agree with you on that, but there is a price, there's a value in being able to go forward in the next, especially 5 years, when you're looking at the $2.5 million incentive that we're going to be doing for Toyota over the next 4 years. It's going to total out to $14,650,000.
14.65 million.
Ah, there we go. And so when you look toward down the line of how we're going to afford to have that taken out of our budget, having that fund balance and maintaining that fund balance by not paying down the police station right now, I think there's a value in that in terms of the stability of the city, the expectation that we can make as far as budgeting. There were some dark days back in 07 and 08.
Extremely dark days,
We're
but
not
you
going
still
back.
have $6 million left in the bank, isn't that right?
Currently, I think the low point, of course, I was making a couple of assumptions, and that's why I want to, after this, bring back that fund balance estimate to you all, try to get some more pieces of that puzzle together as far as what kind of revenue we might see from some projects that are going to be taking place this fall and next year with the interchange and the college, and seeing what type of new revenues we're getting from some of our other manufacturers that are hiring. I want to get that whole analysis together so we can do a good assessment of the reserves, because obviously none of us want to make any lump sum $1 million, $2 million payments without being comfortable that reserve is going to hold.
And we could always, I mean, we've talked about this in finance, of making a resolution council that we'll do the 20-year finance on the police department, but set aside money as we can to try to pay the thing off in 10 years.
Right.
That is the plan.
I mean, that's
It'll be easy on us stretching out over a 20-year period, but our goal is to pay this off in 10 years.
It's just not, it may be our goal, but it's just not been our history.
Well,
So, because other things come up, just like what came up with the opportunity for this back here. I mean, you know, it came up in an opportunity, and so we thought that was a wise move, and think it was. So, it's sometimes our intent, but it's not what we do. So, but that's fine.
we can shrine it in a resolution if you so desire at the time that we actually accept the bonds or whatever next step of the process is, but I'm concerned about, and David and I have had this conversation, concerned about the fund balance and making sure we've got enough in reserve to get through these next 4 or 5 years, while at the same time starting on the police station, which has been so desperately needed for a long time. And that's kind of the balancing act we're looking at.
Well, Stacy is, projecting, and our projections look very, very good at this time, and since she made the previous projection, a couple things have happened. 300 jobs coming down from Erlanger, the approval of the interchange and the college, so everything is headed in the right direction, and certainly we want to keep them going in that direction. Okay, right now, this is second reading.
Let me ask a question. You mentioned a number of months, and I don't know if I've understood you, Mr. Leslie. Do you mean, are you intending or were you meaning to delay the beginning of the construction of the construction?
Absolutely
Okay,
not.
Okay.
No,
Just
what,
wanted to clarify that.
I'm
It
glad
sounded
you
like-
asked. I mean, just for clarification, I would propose that we fund it with our own money until such time as we're ready to actually lock in and execute the loan itself.
And we would be reimbursed from the bond
Yeah.
ordinance. So.
Gotcha.
We'd use money out of our
Yes, we can do that.
general fund.
And we would obviously work with Ross and Claire to make sure we don't want to miss the
Right.
great
Well-
interest rates right now. We'll work out the best timing
Assuming
within the
this
next few
passes,
months.
We would be able to move on to the legal documents, official statements, get the rating ready, get everything in line so that, when you guys are ready to go, we're
You'll be
reviewing it
ready.
quickly, and it
Right.
won't be a matter of weeks, months. We'll be able to get this going, and then we come back on June 9th, you guys say when, we can have a good target, good timeline, get the funding in place.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lusby,
Yes.
Mr. McEwen,
Yes.
Mr. Penn,
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Saints,
No.
Mr. Showalter,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Brian, very much.
You have to. No, we're good. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, municipal order approving bids for the police department.
I was going to, we obviously have the bids. I'm going to let Mr. Codell, or Mr. Curry, I'm sorry, Mr. Codell, Travis Curry, come up here in just a moment and talk. I'll let Tracy go ahead and read
Oh.
you don't want him to read it? Okay. I'll just tell you the grand total, base bids and the recommended alternates are $4,591,663. A 5% contingency on that construction cost is $229,583. Special inspections are estimated, we have a quote on those of $33,039. Total construction cost of $4,854,285. Reminder that excludes the architectural and the construction manager fees, which have already been budgeted with cash. So, since she doesn't need to read it, I'll bring Travis up, and if you have any
Ready.
questions, you can let him and I know.
Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Travis Curry with Codell. I'm the project manager. On May the 6th, we received bids for the construction of the new Georgetown Police Department. On the day, we received a total of 45 bids, which is quite a few bids. We spent our time reviewing those bids and in conjunction with Branstetter Carroll, your architect. And I think you have our recommendation letter, the bid tab sheet with our recommendation in front of you. And I'll be glad to address any questions you may have related to our recommendation.
You all right?
All right. I do want to add one thing to our recommendation. Our masonry bidder, excuse me, not for sure. There may be an issue with him, and if there is, we will need to come back before you and bring that to you. More than likely, there won't be an issue there, but I just want to leave that on the table.
What did you think might be that issue?
Well, he may decide he doesn't want to do the masonry work.
Okay, gotcha.
As of Thursday, he was fine, good to go. So probably won't be an issue, but I just want to bring that to your attention.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, sir.
When you put these out for bid yourselves, right?
Yes, sir.
It wasn't really the city putting it out for bid, it was through Codell, is that right?
That's correct. We put it out, had a public bid opening here, bidders brought their bids here, laid them out, open public reading, et cetera.
Okay.
Everything was.
So it was pretty close to the same process we follow.
Yeah,
They're
everything was.
essentially doing it on our behalf. I mean, they have to follow, since it's a public contract, they gotta follow our
Okay.
minimum procedures.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to let you know, assuming you approve this, we will have our pre-construction meeting on June 5th at 3 o'clock here, and we will be mobilizing the following Monday to get to work.
Wow.
Excellent.
Motion.
Second.
Whoa.
Kelly.
Did you get them?
Who was the second? Kelly?
You're good.
Kelly.
Any further comment?
Just don't let it go over budget.
Please. That's what you're there for.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
May I be dismissed?
You may.
Only if you bring back chocolate. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, and Mike was here as well. Thanks for coming, Mike.
Thank you very much. Police Department.
Don't let it go over, or Miss Karen will push you in their favorite pool.
Great. No, I got one more.
Got one? Oh,
Yeah.
Don't forget interlocal.
approving the interlocal budget deal. We don't want to bypass that one. I checked off the wrong one.
Okay.
Okay.
And just again, we brought this back now that the mayor's budget has been presented for your consideration. So, there it is.
Is this new, this process, or this resolution?
It's
method?
not something we've done before. It was something that the interlocal committee, when they met, they requested. I believe it was our members of that committee maybe that even requested that to show a good faith that we plan to approve these as budgeted. And again, there were two considerations that the county gave to us. The first was we had capital expenses in the EMS budget of $450,000. So our half of that is $225,000, and would allow us to pay for those over 2 fiscal years. So $112,500 each year. And the second consideration was we have up until this point been paying the cost of 3 full-time equivalent employees for animal control, and they have dropped that to 2 employees. Again, there are a couple of exceptions in here in that, we reserve the right to reduce the capital projects budget for Parks and Rec, which the mayor and I have already made a couple of reductions to in conversation with Jerry. And again, the city reserves the right to reduce or adjust its own interlocal budgets as necessary. So you're really accepting EMS, animal control, electrical inspection, EMA, Parks and Rec, and PNC.
Only so insofar as the operating on Parks and Rec.
Yes, the operating budget on Parks and Rec.
So if we approve this tonight, when we get through our budget, we can't make amendments then to any of these interlocals if we so chose?
Certainly the spirit of the resolution. I don't know the legality of that. Andrew can speak to that, but I know that's the spirit of the resolution.
Yeah, I mean, you can always undo your own resolution. I mean, it is the idea that you have certain steps that you want to get out of the way in order to move forward, but
Like I said, it came in the recommendation of the committee.
The idea was a recommendation of the committee to make that based on a few things that they offered us as sort of nice, helpful
helpful payment plan.
Yes, payment plan, if you will.
It was just a way to, it was just a way to get some of these issues out of the way. There were certain concessions made.
And I think since
Connie
their
and
budget
I
goes in at
were
the
on
end
the
of month.
committee.
So it was
And, that's certainly the spirit of the resolution, a good faith effort. Like Andrew said, it's just a resolution. Whoever votes yes isn't necessarily bound by blood by this, I don't think. But anyway, the resolution is what it is.
I'll make a motion, Mayor.
Motion for approval?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Second.
I guess if
Discussion?
I guess if concessions were made, I think it would be appropriate for the council to know what those were.
Well, the two things that I just noted.
Yeah.
That there were $450,000 of proposed capital expenditures for the cardiac defibrillators and the lifts. So our half of that would be $225,000, and the concession was that we could pay that over 2 years rather than in 1 year. And also, like I said, up until currently, we pay for 3 full-time equivalent animal control employees, and they have lowered that obligation to, from this point forward, we would only pay for 2 full-time equivalent animal control employees. So those are the 2 concessions that were made from the county to us.
Yeah, I'm not real comfortable with passing a resolution because we did postpone it until after the mayor because we was going to do it before the mayor had a chance to present the budget, but it actually kind of hamstrings the council in discussions over the next few weeks. And actually, if we're going to sit here and pass a resolution and then turn around and decide we're going to undo a resolution, it's kind of foolish to do it in the first place. So I understand the intent behind the committee to bring things to us early, and that part of it is very, very positive. But I think the resolution really kind of takes some of the working ability of the council for the next couple of weeks that we're going to be working on it. So I'm not going to vote for it.
I would agree.
Has the county,
Any other comments?
has the county done something similar?
I'm sorry.
Has the county done something similar?
I don't know if they've adopted an actual resolution. I know we do have, obviously, the verbal discussion that they will fund. Well, actually, I don't know if this isn't a county resolution. It does say the county will fund the city's interlocals as presented, however we present
Yeah.
those, and I think that's
And they have
been
passed
the
their
case.
budget.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think it was our members of the committee that suggested the resolution, so they can correct me if I was wrong, but my memory serves.
Okay.
Clerk.
Yeah, my only concern is just the individual components that, if we want to discuss those later, since that's ahead of us.
Tracy, since we have some discussion and different views, would you take a roll call vote, please? We have a motion and a second.
We do. Mr. Lesby?
I'll support the recommendation of the committee and vote yes.
Mr. McEwen?
No.
Mr. Penn?
No.
Mrs. Tingle Sames?
No.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mr. Singer?
Yes, please.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
5-3. Very good. Now we're ready for the police department. You got a report for us, chief?
No? Can you share that smile with us?
Surely you got something to say.
Feel like that about this time, being up here. I thank you very much. This started a year ago when we went up to Ashland, started looking. I think we came up with a process, and I think it took us a year to get through that process. Ups and downs, finding locations, leasing or buying, and all that stuff. And I think we worked hard for a year to get it done, and you will be proud when this thing's done. I'll make sure you got a professional police department inside that building, and you'll be
Before
proud.
you came on board, we as a council got together and decided what they thought should be done during this administration. And I think the police department came out item number 2, and that's one of about the only thing we have left on that 10-point goal that we brought up. So we can now say that one is done also.
I appreciate your patience with me throughout this whole thing.
Well, it's been long coming. We've been talking about this ever since we shut it down and then closed it down. So, it's a process that we've been, in a sense, not dragging our feet, but just waiting for the right opportunity. And I think
Mr.
we've
Economy had a lot to
finally
do with it.
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor. I think that's a big part of it.
That was the big part.
12 months ago, I mean, I know probably all of us had some question about our ability to repay it, and things did improve, and they made a turn. It wasn't that any of us didn't support it. We all supported the concept in theory. It was just timing.
Right opportunity.
I congratulate the council for not putting this on the back burner at any step along the way. It was always headed for the same goal, and tonight we got there.
Thank you.
All right, council comments?
I had a gentleman drive by my house on Gannett the other day and was talking about the Dixie Motel, the old, they're on 25, and just was asking if it had been condemned, and was concerned about some of the. Well, it's been like that since I was a teenager. I mean, it's been empty and some distress, and was just interested as far as what the state of the building was, condemnation, and if there is anything we can do to clean it up.
Check out
Where's that again?
Dixie Hotel out on 25, out by the Rock House. Just make a note that we look at, see what the status is of that.
Status of that. And
That's a good recommendation. Anything else?
Also, we had talked a few weeks ago about a resolution about 25. I think Mark said that he had pre-drafted one at some point.
Me?
Traffic?
To deal with the traffic that the state put on us out here with their road diet.
on the.
Bicycle lanes.
Yeah, didn't we voted on that, didn't we?
Did we vote on that?
Yeah, we
Okay.
voted on
I
it, sent it to Frankfurt, yeah.
We
highly recommend looking at it again.
Yeah, highly recommend.
I'll go back and look at those.
Yeah, but we
Yeah.
did, as a whole.
Okay.
We haven't heard anything back, but we highly recommend it too.
Okay. Discussion of the proposed budget. Do you have anything to present tonight? Or you wanna set a meeting or?
I don't have anything new to present, so I'm kind of at the will of council. If you have questions tonight, or if you would like to set a workshop either next week or June 2nd, whatever would. But I'm open to whatever you want to do.
I'll just bring up two things before we set a workshop, because I know one person's watching on television probably, and the other person might be in the audience. There were two things that I've heard a lot that people want. Number one is some sort of parking enforcement downtown. I've heard that from a lot of businesses, and if there's any way to get that.
What is it?
Parking enforcement
Okay.
downtown could be like part-time,
Okay,
something like that. Work on
We've
that.
gone back to doing that.
Okay,
That's in the
done.
process
That's
now,
in the
yes,
process.
yes.
The other thing is, I've heard a lot about curbside recycling, and this is the one year we've paid back most of the debt that the general fund was owed as far as the Kirby's from the sanitation, and that helped pay for our fire truck. But this might be an opportunity this year. We're just buying, I think, the automated truck out of sanitation. That's the main
There is
capital.
currently one budgeted there, yes.
That might be an opportunity this year to at least look at a pilot program to try to free up some money, either within recycling, environmental services, or sanitation in some way to look at least trying to do some sort of pilot program.
Well, we've felt very good about this budget, and we haven't had any calls into the finance director as to concerns, so we feel good about it, and we certainly want you to go through it, and any question you have on it, certainly bring it up.
I just like to tailgate a little bit on Mark and with our IT department that we've talked about doing. I'd really like to try to get an IT department started so that when we move forward, we can get some of the free help and stuff that I know Sophisticity is doing a lot, and that's great. It's a good step forward. But I think in having an IT department is going to help us be able to bring in the future generation to help with that. And you have to have an established IT department to do that. So I just would like to put that on the front burner too, to take our IT department to a 21st century. Big time.
Great suggestion.
Can you put a breakdown as to what the professional services are
Mhm.
for?
The general government? Mhm. Yeah, I've already got that, and I can send it to you.
Okay.
How much are we paying? How much are the hosting fees per year that are coming back to us on the? I mean, on the
Landfill?
On the landfill.
It's around 30,000 and change each quarter, so at least 100.
120?
20, yeah. I think I budgeted 136,000 based on how the quarters have been trending lately.
Yeah, you're right. Just about.
And currently, at the end of the year, those are all moved to their debt balance to help pay off their debt balance, which as of the end of last year was around 2.3 million. So they received credit not only for the lump sum payments they're making, but they received credit for hosting fees, and it says any demolitions. I think that was also in the agreement that if they do any demolitions, they could receive credit for those as well. So.
Is the 600,000 out of the landfill sale putting that toward the pool toward the vehicles, the cruisers?
Yeah, towards the general fund capital. So anything for police, fire, public works, dispatch, building inspection. Of course, our half of those costs only.
All be paid for in cash.
We will get another payment in December from that.
So you want to set a date for a workshop?
Okay.
Hmm? June the 2nd, good for everybody?
Monday night?
Mhm.
Monday night?
Yeah.
Just keep in mind, we will plan, according to our ordinance, first reading on June 9th.
Won't be good for me.
So.
I'll be in New Orleans.
Oh, wow.
I bet you don't really need me here. This is council procedure.
Monday, June 2nd.
Andrew can be here.
I'll be here.
So go ahead and set whatever date you want.
Is everybody good
It's
with
gonna
that?
be,
6
I've
o'clock?
done my work along with Stacy. It's up to you now to,
I make a motion that we do June the 2nd at 6 o'clock, Monday.
Second.
any further comments that's hopefully agreeable to everyone and all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
And just a reminder to send me any questions that come up through your review, and I'll try to respond.
Absolutely. You don't
As soon
need
as
to wait
possible
till
to all
the
of
second.
council.
Anything we can do on this end, let us know.
On the sanitation department, how many more years? I mean, I know we're buying an automated truck this year. How many more years of buying a truck a year are we gonna be at where we can say that we're caught up as far as?
Let me ask Terry about
Have
that.
to ask Terry. We wouldn't know that.
I'll get
Motion
that
to
answer.
adjourn.
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Sims. Second by Mark. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Have a good one.